This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, this is Bob Platt, and I'm here on August 8th for the Arlington Senior Democratic Lunch with Kim Klingler, the candidate for Commissioner of Revenue. And we've got a lively crowd here in the room. We've got more people online. We're so glad that everybody could join us. I want to tell you that next month's speaker is Susan Cunningham, who's a candidate for county board. And we're going to eat in a local restaurant, the financial arrangements for which have still to be finalized, but I will announce that very quickly. So without further ado, I will give you our official nominee. She wasn't the last time she spoke before us, but ever since June primary, she won, miraculously won the June primary. And
was a tough race, Bob.
Yes, but not only is she famous for winning the June primary, but she's been active in ACDC for at least more than a decade.
Since
2007. That seems like yesterday, but that's probably right. And so I'm going to give you Kim Klinger. Well, the camera's on also, so I think they'll probably see.
Oh, they'll see me too? Okay.
Yeah.
So I got to look at everybody and the camera, so I don't want to.
Well,
All right.
You can.
Okay.
Yes, I am. How about soda?
We're just making a few arrangements here, so just stay tuned for just a moment. So as Bob said, Bob, thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you for hosting us today. We are at 1300 Army Navy Drive today, which is exciting. I haven't been here since the last, I think, ACDC retreat. And that was pre-COVID. That was probably what, January, right before COVID? Is that right, Bob?
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? My name is Kim Klingler. I've been an Arlingtonian now for over 20 years. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. As I mentioned previously, I have been, an Arlington Young Democrat, I think since about 2007, 2008, but really started to get involved more in 2009, 2010 as a joint campaign co-chair. So I've been around for a while doing many, many different things. What brought me to Arlington? I graduated from James Madison University. My friends told me that Arlington was a super cool and hip place to be. And being a military brat, I really wanted to find a home, a place that I could really grow some roots. And lo and behold, I think, Herschel, do you think I've done that here? Think I put some roots down? Maybe? I'm a homeowner and a renter simultaneously. That's another story, which I'll tell later. I'm also a foster parent. I do have a teenager at home right now. She just graduated high school, so I'm incredibly proud of her. And my background professionally is, my background was actually in health IT. And then I went and worked for Deloitte for a while as a health IT, health information technology. And then I went and worked for Deloitte for a while as a management consultant, doing all sorts of things, process improvement, financial management, operations, you name it. I decided I really wanted to go back more into healthcare. So I joined up with the American Society of Clinical Oncology, ASCO. Thank you, Bob. Where I was a division director for an IT department. And then I really said, I love my community work a little bit more than my job. I was the chair of the Emergency Preparedness Advisory Commission here in Arlington. I was a volunteer firefighter EMT for the Falls Church Volunteer Fire Department, the chair of the Committee of 100. For those of you who are online, you'll see my screen with all these logos of all the little things that I've done, a civic association president, an HOA president. I'm never going to be an HOA president ever again, but that's another story. But lo and behold, an opportunity came up to apply to be the executive director of the Columbia Pike Partnership, which was previously known as the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Columbia Pike, but it's 3.5 miles. It's known as the world in a zip code, and it's a place we're really trying to showcase and retain our diversity through times of development and transition. So for the past 4 years, I've really been helping the residents and more specifically the businesses on the Pike. So when the opportunity arose to potentially run for Commissioner of Revenue, I first wanted to figure out, Herschel, what does the Commissioner of Revenue do? What do they do? So hold on, I'm not going off of my script real quick, so I'll come back to that in just a second. But just based upon my experience, my values are connectivity and collaboration. I want to get things done together. It really makes me who I am. Community and service. I love this community. I want to see Arlington continue to thrive. I think there's a lot of things that we can do as a community to improve our life for everyone here in Arlington, even though we're doing a great job already. Innovation and impact. Yeah, I have an IT background. IT, process improvement, all those types of things really do help. And I want to bring those skill sets to the job. And then we also want to have fun. Because if we're not having fun, why bother? So real quick, what does the Commissioner of Revenue do? First, I'm going to start with what they do not do. They do not collect the taxes. The treasurer, Carla De La Pava, and her team are the ones who collect the taxes. The Commissioner's office, and for those of you online, there is a diagram that we're working on. We're going to make it prettier. It kind of shows what the Commissioner's office does, but what they do is they assess. So the Commissioner's office tells you how much do you owe for anything that helps you transport. So how much do you owe for your car, or your boat, or your airplane if you have one? I mean, lo and behold, some people do. The Commissioner's office is also the entry point for all businesses in Arlington. So if you want a business license, if you want to do business in Arlington, you go through the Commissioner's office. And then they assess how much you owe for your business tax based upon your work and the work that you're doing within the community. Those are the primary roles of the Commissioner's office. There is a lot of touch points with a lot of other offices, which you'll see on this slide. Arlington Economic Development. Currently, the Commissioner does do work with Arlington Economic Development. Currently, in my current role with Columbia Pike Partnership, we are holding hands with Arlington Economic Development on a daily basis because we want to make sure we can have economic development, sustain our businesses so that we can bring in the revenue so we have all the wonderful programs and services here in Arlington. I mean, look at all the construction happening right now. That all happens because of revenue, and those are the things that we need. Department of Health and Human Services for various permits. DMF, Department of Management and Finance. There's also touch points there. We talked about the Treasurer's Office. There's also touch points with state and county policy and regulation. I'm already having conversations with our state delegates about some things I would like to change in the state code, which would help our businesses here in Arlington. There's also marketing and communications under the county manager's office. And so one of the things we saw during COVID with the PPP loans and the grants is you were not eligible unless you had a business license. Some of our businesses, in fact, a significant portion of our businesses did not know you needed a business license in Arlington to do business. So how do we get out in front of that to make sure everyone knows they need a business license so they can actually take advantage of these programs? And then CPHD, Community Planning, Housing, and Development. When you have a business, you also have to go through them to make sure that you have your official permits. So that's another touch point where the Commissioner's office will say, hey, let's help you get through so you can get your certificate of occupancy and get open for business so you can do well and generate revenue and help all of us in the end. So Herschel, I don't know if that answers your first question. We'll get to your second question later. My focus areas, as I mentioned, is enhancing marketing and communications, making it easier to do business in Arlington. I had my own little LLC, which I put on pause. And guys, I know what I'm doing, but there were a little bit more loopholes than I was anticipating getting my business up and running. So I want to make sure we streamline those processes. So everyone tells me when they call the Commissioner's office, once they call, they get exactly what they need and they are happy campers. But sometimes they have to call to do that. Can we actually reduce our phone calls, be a little bit more proactive up front? Can we actually have online chat? Because as we know, the next generation coming up, many of them don't like to pick up the phone and call. So how do we get in front of that challenge? And then I really want to prioritize our diversity, talent retention, and development. There are 53 team members in the Commissioner's office. And Ingrid has done such an exceptional job hiring diverse folks with diverse talents and backgrounds. And we need to leverage that through our language, through our communication. And I've been meeting with the team. Once I became the nominee, as Bob said, I've been meeting with the team and really asking them, what can we do to make their lives easier and to make all of the constituents' lives easier as well? So we have some ideas. My last slide here, sorry guys, if you're so inclined when we're done, I have my supporter board.
Oh, wow.
And I have Sharpies. So would love to get your support. As Bob has alluded to, I have been unopposed. And so I will say raising money has been more challenging than I anticipated. We still, unfortunately, do have costs, about $20,000 in costs, just between filing fees, organizational fees, signage. And I do have a campaign manager who I want to make sure he does get a level of financial support because he's been fabulous. And he also had open heart surgery back in February. So, and he's doing well now. Thank goodness.
If I can interject
Yes.
on that point, we have a joint campaign in Arlington.
Yes.
And every candidate and every campaign has to make a assessment or a contribution into that. So if you donate to Kim, a large part of it is donating to the joint campaign. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Because, I mean, the party does great things for us, but we also need to pay them as well. So a lot of it all goes back in. And we're doing a lot of partnered events with other candidates. I was out with Rip Sullivan and Jennifer Boysko, last week, trying to support them as well, making sure that we keep our house blue. We have a big statewide election coming up, which is huge, being able to give into that. So anyhow, no, I don't. You know, actually, people say, Kim, you shouldn't be disappointed. There was a gentleman, I don't know, should I name him? Well, Mike Cantwell, who is the Civic Association president of Yorktown, he was going to run against me. And we met back in March, and he's like, I will let you know by May. And I saw him following me on social. It was getting a little, but I knew what he was doing. And then he did call me in May, which I really appreciate. And he said, Kim, you're doing all the things that I would be doing. I don't think I could do anything differently. And I said, you know, I'm flattered. Thank you. But I kind of wanted to run against him.
I'll tell you another historic story. And I think this was when, this was probably in the very early 90s, but there was a gentleman who lived in this building who happened to be Republican, and he signed up for the candidates training that the Republican Party did. And so he decided to run for Commissioner of Revenue, and he reserved this room and had his candidacy launch, and a lot of us, including people like me, showed up at the meeting. And, you know, we asked him, why do you want to run for Commissioner of Revenue as opposed to treasurer? And he couldn't answer that. And then his campaign ended up amounting to like nothing. But that was.
So this group took him off the ballot, huh?
I'm not saying that.
Uh-oh, I'm nervous now, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same person. Somebody was going to run, he didn't realize it was a full-time job.
Oh, interesting.
And I think he found that, decided not to run. Just thought, well, we have lots of, like, particularly at that time, the county board wasn't what it's become.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people, and in fact, in Fairfax County, they're like a chairman of the supervisors or whatever it's called, who had another full-time job. So,
Oh, wow.
anyway, he didn't realize it was an actual job, that
Yeah.
the 9 to 5.
It is. I mean, that's one thing I'm realizing, Herschel, is Ingrid has laid such a wonderful foundation, but she's been in the office for 20 years. And so as I'm meeting with folks, they're telling me, hey, we have legacy IT systems, we have some legacy processes. Things are working well now, but you know, how do we create additional efficiency? And the largest team I've ever managed before was 36. So this is a little bit more than I've managed in the past. They have great leads in specific departments and specific areas, which is just huge. It's very helpful. But it is a full-time job. And I'm already starting to transition into that job as I stay in my current job and hopefully bring in a new executive director and transition off to them before the end of the year. So it's a lot, but I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about the potential.
Well, I guess the first question that we should discuss that's substantive is, how do you feel about the taxation on cars? and the car tax, which is sort of was supposed to be phased out 20 years ago, and then their decal fees without the decals,
Yes.
and it's sort of surreal. But I'd love to hear your views on it.
I know. So, it's funny. When I first was in Virginia, I was at James Madison University. Who was the gentleman running on no car tax? The gubernatorial candidate? Who was it?
The person who beat Don Byer.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I heard about this because I came from other states where there was no car tax because the taxes were taken from other pots. Every year when I pay my car tax, I do not like it. And especially last year when my car tax was more than the previous year, which we probably should have gotten out in front of a little bit more to communicate. However, a lot of this happens down in Richmond, right? So this is about lobbying our delegates, our state delegates and senators, if this is something we really want to do. And then the next question is, what pot do we take that money out of if we're not going to be using a car tax anymore? I'm actually looking to trade in my car and get a hybrid. And I just learned that there's actually a hybrid tax too, because I'm paying less gas. And so that's how they're going to make up the gas tax. So I'm like, hey, how is this fair? As gas prices continue to rise, because what is it? OPEC has, or is it Saudi, has reduced the number of production that they're going to be doing until September.
But that was actually an issue I was very involved in. Not that you
Tell
care,
me more.
but what happened was it used to be that gas pumps were done with little gears and gizmos. So having a stated rate gas tax was absolutely essential because they'd set the gears and the pumps couldn't go over $1 anyway.
Yeah.
And then they moved to computerized gas pumps,
Okay.
and it was assessed on a per gallon basis. What we did when we reformed it within the past decade, actually, was we turned it to something like 2.6% of a wholesale tax, so that the gasoline distributors, which I think there are less than 2 dozen in Virginia, they had to file a return and pay a tax based on their wholesale sales,
Interesting.
rather than make every single little corner gas station file a return.
A lot of administrative burden.
Right. But the advantage is, of course, that as the price of wholesale gas goes up, the revenues go up, and conversely, they go down when prices are lower. But you could argue it's almost a conservation measure. But the savings on state administrative costs were significant and helped the funding of highways significantly. The problem I have with the car tax, particularly with the so-called phase out, is it makes it essential that a lot of paperwork happen at both the county commissioner of revenue level and at the state level. So it's like the worst of both possible worlds. You don't have economies of scale, you don't have efficiency in collection, and it's very granular because every person's make and model and year of every car factors into it. So other than burning all the Kelly Blue Books in America, there's nothing you can do to simplify it. It's the way it's structured now.
Gilmore.
Jim Gilmore, good
was the
job.
guy.
I did it by staring at my phone.
But the funny thing is,
It came to me because I couldn't
he ran on
search for it.
abolishing the car tax, but he just made it very convoluted so that it was ran down with appropriation from the state. So the state essentially paid a reduction of the car tax, but they didn't eliminate it. And since they didn't eliminate it, all of the paperwork of the car has been preserved. And that's why the thing just makes no sense at all. It's like maximizing the overhead and minimizing the revenue.
Example from
Well, it was interesting. Last year, the cars had been exempt because the prices went back up. They actually had to pay car tax last year. Those folks got separate phone calls to give them a warning that was happening.
So that hybrid too. I mean, you're You shouldn't be taxed for polluting less. It should be somehow, there should be a tax on older I mean, there should be a surcharge on older models or something, but that's regressive for people who can't afford it.
True. And that's what's really interesting about the commissioner's role is they're in the swim lane, right? You guys, when's the last time you guys were in a pool in swim lanes? You know, you have the ropes, right? And you're trying to stay in your swim lane. If you know anything about me, I have a tendency sometimes to go in other people's swim lanes. And so people have told me, Kim, you got to stay in your swim lane. However, you can give flippers to these guys over here, and you can give these guys a paddleboard, and you know, you can cheer them on, but you got to stay in your swim lane. So I have a feeling a lot of that is going to be happening actually. Maybe not initially my first year, because I want to not rock the boat too much, but there's a lot of things that can be done at the state level to ease administrative burden. I mean, just in general, economies of scale, as Bob talked about, reduce costs, and hopefully in the end, actually make life easier and bring our revenues up. So, I mean, that's what I love about having my management consulting background is, I know it doesn't sound sexy, but it was so much fun at the time when you could really just pull those levers and see the results. And just meeting with Ingrid's team and some of their ideas as well. I mean, there's such potential here. There really is, which is exciting. Now, the car tax in general, yeah, I'm going to have to go talk to, you know, Rip and Alfonso and Barbara and Adam, and let's see who else do we have now, and see, hey, is this something we really want to push? And that's really going to depend on what does the House and the Senate look like after November.
But I would also suggest talking to the county board. Because,
yes.
In fact, talking to them first, because it is an issue. How do you make up the revenue?
Correct. And so, yeah.
So, and in fact, if the state sort of supplements it, sort of what happens to all that if the car tax goes away. So it's the county board and for that matter, the county staff before you go to the legislators, propose changes in legislation.
Yeah,
which you may regret. I mean,
no, that's wise. That's very wise, Herschel. Yes.
You got elected governor, but he had to change his proposal because he discovered there were a lot of Republican local government officials who weren't that happy.
Yes.
And he said, okay, we'll just have the state replace your revenue.
Okay, how?
So it became a big problem for the state budget.
That's why it's phased out, allegedly.
Which he didn't care about because he
was out of office.
He got elected and he can only be in one term. So
we got lucky. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that. To your point, Herschel, there's some things that we can look at maybe at the county level that we can do. So for instance, there's maybe I shouldn't be telling you all this, but there is a code on the books in the county that if you're a new business in the county, the first year, no matter what the size of your business, you do not have to pay more than $40,000 in taxes.
Including Amazon?
I'm not going to say.
Okay. Well, I do have another Amazon related question, since 3 of the people at this table live in this building. We're biased, but one of the painful things is that because Amazon HQ2 moved down the street, you know, the perceived market value of the neighborhood, at least initially, skyrocketed. Less so now because Amazon HQ2 has been sort of put on a slower timeline. But it does raise the issue of to what extent can or should property taxes be sort of dampered, you know, like the 5-year rolling average rather than the last appraisal.
So real quick, I do want to be very clear that unfortunately that's not in my swim lane.
Right, I know that. And I know there are more people in the audience here who don't live in this neighborhood than do, so be careful.
So when it comes to real estate tax and the assessment of that is done through the Department of Management and Finance.
Yes.
I know that my potential predecessor, Ingram Roy, wanted that actually function to be brought under the Commissioner of Revenue's office. I don't know why it's separate. No one can ever tell me why, but I've been also told not to ask that question and never have it rolled under Commissioner of Revenue. Maybe you guys have some history in that. But I like the idea kind of a 5-year rolling average. I do know folks recently who have gone and they have questioned their assessments, and they have actually looked at a 5-year average to reassess their property. So I don't want to say everyone go and do that.
This is now for homeowners versus
Homeowners.
businesses.
Yeah, for homeowners. But I know people who've gone through the process and who have had results that they are happier with.
Well, the other answer to your question is that if you read the statutes, that doesn't help you if you have to do that, you are required by law to tax 100% of the assessment, with the exception of very small categories like widows of Purple Heart veterans and a few other things. Yeah, but generally it's if the value is on the books, you have to assess and tax based on 100% of it. You can't just say, you know, by divine wisdom, I'm going to give everybody a 25% discount or something.
Yeah, the rolling average would have to be changed in the code.
Yeah.
State code.
Yes,
That would be
yes.
state code. Okay.
You know, I think,
That's right. You're right, Herschel. You're right.
the reason that somebody cautioned you about asking about the real estate taxes and why isn't it the
I'm
commissioner's
just
office
curious.
is because they can turn that around
Oh,
and say,
absolutely.
why are all those assessments
Not
the
under
commissioner's
EMF.
office?
Yes.
And why do we need a commissioner? Why don't we just roll those things to the county?
So it's interesting. I mean, and I'm still trying to learn the whole history, but what I've been told is the initial intent was to have checks and balances. So that you had checks and balances between your Department of Management and Finance, between your treasurer, the collector, and between your assessor, the Commissioner of Revenue. There's a lot of jurisdictions where real estate is actually under the Commissioner of Revenue, but there's also some jurisdictions that do not have a Commissioner of Revenue. Arlington has taken the stance, to my knowledge, to continue to have those checks and balances. And that's why they kind of have wanted to have it 3 ways. And I don't know if you've heard something different, because I haven't gotten some very clear answers on it either.
No, I mean, I have to check that the whole original structure goes back to before the bird machine, even before, you know, when clerks of the court or something were big cheeses and so forth.
Yeah, this definitely goes back.
Almost perhaps even to colonial, and it's evolved. So lots of sheriffs are in charge of.
That's what they said. Yeah, it used to be the sheriff that was in charge. Yeah.
Lots of sheriffs are in the state are like police commissioners in Arlington. They enforce the law. Here, the sheriff has very limited sort of guarding the jail and the courthouse, basically. So there's some history, and there may even be a book in my house someplace.
If you find it, let me know. I'm very interested.
That has, there's certainly one in the Virginia room of the library with that kind of history. And I'm sure there's someplace in the county, there's an expert.
I'm gonna find them.
But so, yeah, so, you know, I think now it's kind of arbitrary. I mean, it just sort of happened at some point. Somebody was concerned about the real estate assessments, and they shifted it to the
Did hear something about
county
that.
government. It's a complex thing. You know, I don't know how many people are involved in that, but
I believe they have close to 40 on that staff.
but it would, you know, double the size of your office or something, or half the size when it. So, yeah, I don't think there's a logical reason for any of that. It's sort of happenstance and who was in the legislature at the time, and his brother or something or cousin was
It's a commission.
the commissioner or the treasurer.
That would be fascinating.
And you'd have to know how it evolved outside Arlington. And so, I mean, some of it for Arlington, may be when they created the county manager form of government. But somehow things got written in that have remained the same.
What year was the county manager from a government?
Like 32, something
32?
like that.
Goes
What
way back.
about commercial property? Who assesses commercial property?
So that is also under real estate with Department of Management and Finance. However, if they are a business and have a business license, that is under Commissioner of Revenue.
But the business license tax and people taxes is much smaller than the real estate tax in terms of the wedge of the pie.
We're having a conversation. Has anybody
Yes.
out there wanted to jump in? Jump in.
Let's see.
Talk a little bit about B-poll as well, because that's something that's been coming up.
Yeah. So the question, folks at home, is raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I will also go to Linda because she's on a phone. So and Linda, you're going to have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. I muted you before if you have a question. But does Kim Rucker or Helena Griffith have a question now? Okay, I guess we don't have anybody in the peanut gallery asking questions, but does anyone want to talk about why don't you talk about the B-Paul tax? That's
What,
That's
stands for business and professional
Thank you.
license, I guess,
Yes.
tax.
Let's see. Oh,
Occupational.
I think it is. I should know this.
Yeah.
I will confirm and verify what B-poll stands for. Right now, pretty much in Arlington, if your company makes $10,000 a year, so let's say you have a dog walking service and you make $10,000 a year, you owe B-poll, which really it's a flat rate. It's about $30 up until you get up into $100,000. But the administrative burden for collecting B-poll on businesses that are making $10,000 a year is significant. And so we're running the numbers right now, and it looks like if we were to change the threshold to $100,000 a year where you owe B-poll, then it would have to cover about $250,000. This is something that can be decided at the county level.
I don't understand.
You mean if the floor is
If you raise the floor,
$100,000
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
instead of 10,000.
instead of 10,000, then what would happen?
Then we would have pretty much a gap of $250,000
In the revenue.
in the
county
revenue.
revenues.
Yes.
Why?
Why is it such a burden to go on to CAP or write a check for $30?
In my
I mean, they make
yes.
me do it without telling me for my home alarm system.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know more
And then
about
they
that.
fine you. But
Yes,
they don't
they
tell
do.
you you have to pay. But then if you don't pay it, they fine you.
So
And they don't tell you how to pay it.
and that is the challenge, right? That's a challenge because this was the first time this year that the county went completely electronic for business tax. And
This works fine if they're doing something like that.
if
It's when you don't put it in that system that
So there were like over 10,000 businesses that did not have CAP accounts. They were actually paying through paper. And so they sent out postcards, snail mail with QR codes to get everyone to get CAP accounts. Because this is something Loudoun County's been doing for quite some time, and we're really looking at their model for efficiency. They got down to 4,000 folks who did not have CAP accounts, and I think it's now at 2,000. So theoretically, to your point, if everyone does get on CAP and you get the electronic notifications through email and or text, this should be a simpler process. However, the amount of businesses that are at that $10,000 threshold is actually significant and takes up more time than actually looking at the businesses that are over $100,000 and using those resources to actually audit them. Each auditor right now brings in about $500,000 a year in audits. And right now they're pulled away to do other things because of these lower thresholds. So a lot of numbers are being run right now because I'm asking the question. I'm not officially in office, but I'm asking the question, if we were to increase the threshold to make it easier for our smaller businesses, does it make sense? And so I don't have an answer for you yet, exactly, definitively, but it is a question that I'm also starting to talk to the county board about because this came up a few years ago.
Is the auditing under you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For both business and
Just for business and personal, yes. Yes.
But the fact is there are other things rather than just the business license aspect. For example, one time I organized foot races and I have the business license for that. And then I volunteered to put on a race for a county board candidate.
I want to hear about this.
And then
I want to do one.
Oh, I'll be happy to. But then in the course of getting the permit for that, and I got a lot of permits, I was forced to then get a entertainment license tax. So I not only paid the basic business license tax, but that year I paid another $45 for putting on this benefit 5K. So that was, they just keep on adding on is the point.
Was it a use permit tax or was it an entertainment tax?
I thought it was an entertainment tax, but it was so long
I'm gonna
ago.
look that. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But there are like 500,000 of them. So. Yeah. Have you paid any taxes in Arlington yet? Or?
Sure. So I grew up here.
Okay.
I've used the CAP system years, and every year I used to get the notification I had to pay my car tax. But yes.
And that's a challenge. Most people only use the system once a year.
Yeah.
And you want to pay it fast, right? I mean, it's October 3rd. So if your water is through the county, then you pay it through the CAP system. If your water is through another entity, like I'm part of an HOA, the HOA pays.
Yeah.
That's different. And so that's also another challenge that the commissioner's office has is how do I know someone's actually moved to Arlington? So how do I know that? I can find out if they're in a multifamily building, that multifamily building most likely will notify me. If they get a water bill through the county, that's another way. But if I'm someone like myself who's in an HOA, how do you know that I'm there? I mean, I was able to change, I had to change, my license, and that's how they found out I had moved. But how do we actually get in front to know people who are actually there? Because when I first moved here back in 2001, I'm dating myself, I didn't know about this car tax thing, guys. I didn't know about this sticker. I was traveling every week for work, so I parked my car, on the street because I didn't want to take up parking spaces so my roommates could park in the parking spaces. I came home from travel 2 weeks later. I had 5 tickets on my car. I learned about car tax very quickly. But a lot of people just don't know. So I know marketing and communications for the county is starting to create a web page, which is a welcome to Arlington webpage, everything you need to know. So I say we, hopefully when I am elected in November, to partner with them to make sure we get the word out through postcards, through electronic, through social media, because we have a lot of transitional folks here in Arlington who don't go to the county's website, which is a little dicey right now, I got to be honest with you, but who go to social media every single day. So how do we make sure that they know and they get that QR code in front of them?
Can I make a point about QR codes?
Please.
Not everybody uses them.
Truth.
I hate them.
Okay.
Give me a website. Give me the website and I'll use it.
Both.
But I don't like the QR
Here's a
code.
couple of facts
Yep.
for you. It's business professional and occupational license. And the other is, it looks like Fairfax County starts at 100,000.
Yes, yes, they do. And so one of the things we were looking at is how did they fill that gap? And we're learning from others.
The other thing about it is because it's a gross receipts tax.
And that's statewide, yeah.
So, some businesses, have a big markup. And so and others don't. That, their gross receipts, their expenses are 99% of their gross receipts or something. So it's kind of an odd, as opposed to an income tax. It's it can be very unfair.
And we've had that comment a lot because, especially if you're a newer business and your expenses are incredibly high, but your gross is high as well. And that is
And
that is at the state level.
I thought of another thing for
Yeah.
you to, for a group to work with,
Please.
which is the, I forget what they call it now, but the commission that deals, the Citizens Commission that deals with the budget.
Oh,
That's-
FAC?
The
Fiscal Affairs Advisory
facility-
Commission?
Yes,
That's a
Fiscal
great
Affairs
idea.
Advisory Commission.
Yeah. Put it out to FAC. Yeah.
And, so, yeah, who could do kind of a, I mean, it's not an in-depth study, but kind of explore. And there are probably some people on that have
Oh,
background.
yeah, Scott Pedowitz. Yeah. Yeah. Scott.
So,
I'm going to tell him you sent me.
and I don't know whether it's considered, it shouldn't be considered outside your lane for you to interact with them, because they report to the county board. They don't report to
That's true.
the county manager.
But
And that's
but to your point, I need to tell the county board member, whoever their liaison is, that I am talking to them. Yeah. Good point. Good ideas, Herschel. Good
Yeah,
ideas.
that's
everybody.
very valuable.
Yeah.
that's my
What else you got for me?
experience on the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Committee
Yeah.
50 years ago when I was in.
And they're still talking about the same things today.
Some things never change. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, part of this in my background is not from that, I think, but from just discussions with Ruth that she brought home,
That's awesome.
or, or attending debates for commissioner.
See, it's a sexy position, guys. It's sexy.
In the old days, there sometimes was competition for the office.
I've heard about it.
Well, there
There's
was
a lot of
Geraldine
competition.
Whiting, and that's who Ruth worked for. And then she retired. And then there was a two-way race between Margot Horner and Ingrid Maroy. And it was a very hotly contested primary.
I have to admit that if the initial one was a assembled caucus
Oh, okay.
between Fred Berghofer and Jerry Whiting. And I have to admit, looking back, that Fred Berghofer would have made a much better
What year
commissioner of
was it?
revenue than Jerry did.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Hmm?
What year? So curious.
It's late 70s, I think.
Yeah, I mean, these are the things that it's funny. Like Ingrid, when she ran, she had this 23-page program.
That's right. I planned.
I've been going through it. I've been mulling through it. I'm like, okay.
It's like unraveling the Dead Sea Scrolls here.
I mean, it's fascinating though, right? Because how much of it was able to be accomplished, most of it, and how much was not, and how much of it, sorry guys for online, and how much of it is actually really dependent on the state or the county board. And that's why I think, going through these, understanding the history, understanding the background is so important and imperative. And then also looking to, other jurisdictions like Loudoun, like Fairfax City, like Fairfax County, and what are they doing? I like to say always that we're always the smartest here, but I mean, a lot of times we steal ideas from others, and that's the best form of flattery, right?
Right.
And so I'm definitely open to that. Now that I am the nominee, I am scheduling some of those meetings to just learn from others and to see what else we can do. Because we have a 23% office vacancy rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that revenue that we were expecting is no longer going to be there. And
Well, but does it, or is it the fact that it takes a long time for the building appraisals to reflect the vacancy rates? Because again, that's another dampening effect. Unfortunately, it's a lagging indicator. So Mr. Landlord, commercial landlord, is paying full freight taxes for a half-empty building.
Yeah, correct. Until that lease is not renewed. So some might also say that it's more than 23%. So that's why it's just so important that we work with the
No,
other.
I think that
departments.
commercial, if your building is half empty, its value in the market has dropped a lot. And so I think commercial office buildings probably keep up pretty quickly.
So you think there's someone in Arlington County calling up asking Charles Smith, what's your occupancy rate this month? Or,
No, I think Charles Smith is going into the county office and saying, my building, here's another building down the street that just sold, for 40% less than it would have, a year ago. My office building is worth less. I mean, there's some lag
Oh, from
because
the
there's some
market.
people
Yeah, real estate.
who are stuck with rentals that are, way above the market. But I think the commercial real estate, building, I would think reflects, the occupancy,
Yeah.
reflects what happened with the pandemic.
but that's the fundamental problem, or the debate is that just a pandemic related artifact, or has there been a fundamental change in American workplace so that a lot of people will work remotely, and the primary value of Arlington is that we're close to the center of the metropolitan area. We have good mass transit. It's very convenient for a wide variety of people to work here, apart from the ones that live here. And if we move to an economy that promotes remote work, that doesn't value, easy commutes, convenient parking, convenient mass transit, everybody can retreat to their own McMansion, then the value of Arlington real estate goes way down.
Well,
Yeah, and I would think, Charles Smith has a full-time staff keeping track of those and keeping the county informed
yeah, I mean,
when prices go down.
I think the demand for office space in Arlington is going to be lower permanently. Not that it won't go back up a bit from what it was during the pandemic, but people got used to working from home and they like it. And I know even before the pandemic, my son and my son-in-law, who are both in the IT field, they did most of their work from home. They might go into the office once a week. And there are lots of offices that no longer have assigned spaces. When you go in on Monday, you see what office is open and you take it. And somebody else will be using that office on Tuesday. So that's one factor. And of course, I think the effect of BRAC moving out a number of the military offices from Crystal City, I think that
Never
has
recovered.
already worked its way through the system. But what hasn't worked its way through the system yet is the effect of the Silver Line. It used to be Arlington really didn't have any competition. This was the most convenient place to be. But with the Silver Line, McLean, Tyson's Corner, even Reston, those become much more convenient for people to get to. So there's more competition for Arlington than there was 10 years ago.
so what Arlington Economic Development is doing right now is they're looking to actually change the zoning where all of this office space is. I don't know if you guys heard in Roslyn, they're actually going to be putting indoor pickleball courts where there's office space. So we
Based on all the complaints, here's the news. That's a great idea.
put it inside and soundproof it. There you go. There you go. So to your point, because I think Arlington is noticing that it's never going to return to what it was. And so what other uses can we use for this space so that we can continue to generate the revenue?
There was a really interesting report on NPR over the weekend about best optimal use of office buildings to convert them to residential
Yep.
and how you do it to
Yep.
minimize, to take account of the dark core.
Yeah.
Really interesting architect they interviewed.
So that's
Yeah.
another thing that they're trying to push through at the county board level is can they put residential in these office spaces? Another conversation is can you put school space in these office spaces?
Have one down in Southland.
No,
between-
that's a new build. No, I mean,
There's
office.
there's a one that has little handprints. It's on,
Oh, you're talking about the one on
Wilson.
Langston Boulevard?
no,
No.
on Wilson.
Is that the new HB1?
That was a completely new.
Know the schools because I don't have kids, but it's
Up the
on.
hill from
Wilson.
Roslyn?
Yeah, it's between Russell and Fort. Yes,
That was a whole new build. Very.
but it looked like.
They're going to have a non-traditional high school here on Army Navy Drive if Amazon is this building.
Community high school, which actually that's where my foster daughter just graduated from.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What is she doing?
So she actually is really good with little kids.
Okay.
So we're looking at getting her to start working at a daycare center and then maybe an early childhood development certification. So we'll see how it's. Yeah, they are. They absolutely are. And she's great with little kids. She's so good. Where were we going with this? Office space.
Where's the school going?
It's going to be in the block between Eads, Fern, Army Navy Drive, and 12th Street.
And if you guys aren't familiar with Arlington Community High School, it's for learners who've had interrupted learning. So many of the students are between 17 and actually 21. Many of them are immigrants. They're working full time and they're going to school. And I mean, it's just an exceptional program. So I would recommend them highly. These classes are like 6 kids in a class, high accountability, high attention, and a very high graduation rate, considering the backgrounds.
So is the commissioner's office working closely with like the Economic Development Commission?
Yes. So the answer is yes. I mean, right now in my current, I attend all the Economic Development Commission meetings, and I will continue to make sure someone from the commissioner's office attends those because I do think it's incredibly important to know what AED is doing on a regular basis so that we can assist and we can partner. Because, for instance, Tara Palacios, who heads up BizLaunch, which is the team that really helps anyone start a business, they just put out a video and they're putting it wide on social, why you need a business license. And then it ties right back to the work that the commissioner's office does. So we want to make sure we're lockstep with them. It's really important. I mean, I've been meeting with Ryan Toohill, the new director, already about my current job and hopefully my future job. So it's a nice transition for me because I'm already playing in this space and people already know me and I have the relationships. But it's also looking through things with a different lens now as well.
I know, like, participated in Commission on Aging because the commissioner's office was involved at that time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think they are.
They aren't now. I know that was something in Ingrid's program that she did not get to fruition on. Yes. But to your point too, I mean, the aging, there's also some exceptions as well, which I feel like the aging and disability population need to know about.
Well,
You can make it into a pretty big job.
You can. And so you got to focus first on what you
What's your-
need to do. Swim lane. And then you can go play in other people's swim lanes if they let you.
And the other thing is now, they can't always have full meetings, but you don't really care if you're not voting. If you're participating or your staff is participating as voting members,
They don't have
you're
to
not
go in
concerned
person.
about being there if you can observe the meeting.
True.
And
True. I got to tell you, Herschel, before county board meetings were online, I used to go to county board meetings with my laptop, get next to an outlet, and I would literally work through the entire county board meeting, but make sure I was paying attention, right? And now I can do it online. Yeah.
Well, just to keep the people at home more entertained and to give you a chance to nibble into your salad, we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is farmer markets.
Yes.
So why don't you just,
Oh, thanks, Bob.
I know, because
That's exactly why, one of the reasons why I took this role.
I know, but I'll tell you, I recruited him for ACDC.
That is fantastic. I did not know that.
No good deed goes unpunished.
But, well, it's good to be able to carry on that legacy. Well, thanks, Bob and Senior Dems and Kim for letting me join you and break bread with you. And to Kim, I've grown up here, but I actually did not know some of the things that Kim just uh, talked about. So thank you. That was really enlightening. My name is Zach Linick. I'm a lifelong Arlingtonian, but I'm guessing that's nothing compared to how long some of you have lived in here. I moved here from LA in 1999 with my family when I was just a kid, and went to Taylor and then Williamsburg, Yorktown, and graduated from William and Mary, and have been here back in Arlington ever since. Let me just start by saying some of my friends think it's strange, but I feel at home with the senior Dems. I was always one of those weird kids whom my friends resented because I always befriended the teachers and the camp counselors. And once, when I was doing a group tour in Germany with my grandparents, the group was 99% over the age of 65. Most 18-year-olds would have been devastated and said, "Why am I here?" I loved it. I got to talk to everyone had so much experience and wisdom and interesting, things to say and share with me. So anyway, it's good to feel comfortable here. So like I said, and like Kim mentioned, and so did Bob, I recently took over the role as farmers markets and festivals lead for the Arlington Democrats. Partially knowing what I was getting myself into, but partially not. And so I'm starting small, but my hope is to expand slowly. And let me start by saying why I'm here, specifically talking to you guys today. This past weekend, I was just visiting my grandparents in South Florida. And not to tell you a sob story, but I'll tell you where this is going. My grandmother has very late stage Alzheimer's. And my grandfather spends 3/4 of every day taking care of her. But Up Jack, my grandfather, 3 times a week, he volunteers in the community. He gives back, which is remarkable in my mind, because most of his mental energy and time is spent taking care of Mama, my grandmother. And so I asked him this weekend, I said, "Bob, how do you find time and the mental energy to give back?" And he said, "Well, my first commitment is to the woman I've been married to for 63 years. But I also think it's really important in the name of public service to give back and to serve my community. And it's also rewarding." And so I admire the senior Dems engagement in the community. You guys are the best volunteers. I wish, I'm a young Dem, a fellow young Dem, and we do have some committed folks, but it's nowhere near the level of engagement that you guys give to the community. And so I said, "Bob, I really would love to speak to you guys today and tell you about what I'm doing." And so, because of COVID, a lot of our outreach, especially at the in-person events, naturally atrophied, due to this thing you may have heard of called the global pandemic. And so my mission is to hopefully resurrect some of that engagement, especially at farmers markets and festivals. We currently have a presence at the Courthouse Farmers Market, thanks to Colleen and some of the core group of committed volunteers. And then at the normal county events, the county fair, Columbia Pike Blues Festival, Clarendon Day, those types of things. But I'm also hoping to slowly expand into some of the events that we used to have a presence at, or intermittently had a presence at. So things like the Columbia Pike Farmers Market in a neighborhood in which, our presence has been lighter. And so I've got a couple of committed volunteers that are interested in helping restart that. And so one, if anybody has any interest in volunteering at farmers markets generally, or any of these events that are upcoming, I welcome outreach. Two of my primary goals in this role: one, expand our committed volunteer base, because it sort of atrophied during COVID, so that we were able to have a regular presence at most of the farmers markets and festivals in the county, especially those neighborhoods in which we've had, sort of a lighter presence in underrepresented neighborhoods. And two, to expand the number of volunteers we have that speak Spanish and other languages, because a quarter of this county speaks, a fifth of this county speaks something other than English. And I think it's a huge lost opportunity.
If you find them, be sure to share them.
Yes, and that is exactly my goal. So I'd love to create some sort of coherent, plan to make that happen. And then the third thing I'll just say is I'm usually the lowest common denominator in any given room. So I welcome any ideas, feedback, thoughts. I'm happy to send you guys my email address and cell number. But I'm really excited about this role. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, Zach.
And thanks for taking that on. It's
That's
important. Yeah.
I have Democratic volunteers at a bunch of different farmers markets. Is it only courthouse?
Shockingly, we've got only committed volunteers at Courthouse. We used to have them at Columbia Pike,
Yeah.
but there are 7 other farmers markets in Arlington.
It's
I used to live in Overly Hills, and Mary Detweiler was very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting
Yes.
at least every 2 weeks, getting people down there at the Westover farmers market.
Can I just say, I help co-organize early voting poll greeting. The same people are asked to do the same things over and over. We have elections every bloody year. Mary was so active in the, the constitutional amendments. I mean,
Yeah.
many of us are, close to the point of saying, okay, we've done our share. Somebody else, please step forward, because you have to get a bigger pool.
Yes.
So we have to have people to help. And, you can't be going every time you need someone begging and pleading and wondering if you're going to get it. And it makes it very hard to
Yes.
set up a farmer's market or early voting poll greeting if you don't know you're going to have people filling out, the mobilized link and showing up.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and I know, I adore Mary. If she wants to take anything on, she'll do it, but she's done a lot.
But
And-
I think the other thing is COVID, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, look
It
how
interrupted things.
long it took us to go back to in person. There the people in the older demographics are particularly sensitive to COVID risks. So it's 10 years ago they would say, sure, I'll be there at the table at the crack of dawn. Now it's like, well, should I wear a mask? Is it worth the risk?
It also changed my schedule. It changes one's schedule to where things that you used to have built in or, have a slot for, somehow the slots have changed. And
Yeah.
so it's tough. I mean, I'm worried about it going into this next election, if we're going to be able to staff some of the things that we need to do.
Yeah. I mean, even for the county fair, it's the same people who
Yeah.
volunteer for everything.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you can only go to that well so many times, right?
Yeah, I think the county fair, I suspect, is easier because as long as you can get somebody to set up and take down, and you're not doing something like handling money. People, it's 2-hour things. It's a bunch of people each with a 2-hour thing.
Right.
Something like, the Clarendon Farmers Market, you really have to have somebody who agrees to do it every week.
Yes.
To bring the table.
Yes.
Whatever it is that you.
Yes.
And you got 7 of them.
Yes.
I mean, so you need like 7 people who will commit for a 6-month period. I mean, it's a lot.
Right.
And,
Yep.
the person that was doing the main farmers market is, and was doing some, I think, of Columbia Pike, lives in Wyoming now.
Right. I heard.
I was so lucky. I did 3 years. I did the county fair, which I commend. but also Obama was our president. We had Organizing for America behind us as well. So I'm just trying to think how we offer volunteers.
We're thankfully the county fair is good. I mean, we've got the Biden volunteers helping, but it's mostly what Herschel just referenced is the hurdle of farmers markets being every week. And so that's why I'd love to expand the number of people. So there's a rotation going, and I live close to a couple of the farmers markets, so I don't mind housing some of that material in my place or whatever. But it absolutely is a barrier, and that's why I want to start small, right? Scale.
But, and then also finding the language.
Yes.
People who speak language. And part
Yes.
of it too is that the reason older people are often a huge pool of volunteers is because we're not working
You have
anymore.
the time.
And
Yes. Yep.
many of the people we'd like to get do have job commitments,
Yes.
and then maybe families too.
Yes.
So,
But the other very important aspect of this is festivals. So, for example, Arlington started having these wonderful 4th of July festivals in what's now called Longbridge Park. And so we had to, some group of people had to recognize that and know enough in advance to plan having a tent there.
Mm.
There
Right.
are a lot of one-off things. There used to be something called the Taste of Arlington in Shirlington.
Yes.
And we had a tent there, a table and a tent there. And there were a number of ethnic groups, too numerous for me to mention.
Mhm.
And we had tables there, even though obviously we didn't have native speakers, but we were a presence, and we really wanted to project our
Yes.
our presence there. So if there was some event in Shirlington or whatever, we would be there, and we'd have a table, we'd have a tent, and we'd have the voter registration forms, we'd have information on voting, grip cards to the extent those came out, the whole schmear.
Yep. Well, that's what I'm working on. I've got a whole spreadsheet that I put together with Steve and the Black Caucus, the Women's Caucus. We got the Bangladeshi, the Priya Bangla coming up next
Hopefully
month.
they've approved.
Yes. Is that up in question?
Yes,
Oh, that is good to know.
yes.
Okay.
I still save the date, but just had.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I reached out to them.
Including a business license?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Good intel. Thank you.
I was joking.
Oh, and on Clarendon Day, normally the Republicans have a mask. Now, years ago, I bought a donkey costume. I wore it out for I got some commentary I didn't quite like. It kind of looks a little bit more like a rabbit. But if you would like anyone to use the donkey costume, you can definitely use it.
And unfortunately, we invested a vast fortune in a baby Trump inflatable balloon. Do you remember that?
That is hilarious.
Yeah. So, and we used to do all sorts of crazy things. What was it? We used to have a parade from.
The Clarendon Parade, Mardi Gras?
Yeah. Or the neighborhood day parade, right? And we would all form up and have a mass. It was sort of like Mardi Gras. We would hand out colored beads. We do all sorts of stupid things. It was, yeah. But it was a good way to get in touch with the community. And unfortunately, another age distinction is, I bet I can name any school in Arlington, and within 5 seconds, someone like Herschel would know immediately what street it was on and how to get there. But if you go to an AYD meeting and you say something like Kenmore Middle School, they'll say, "Where's that?"
Right.
If it's not a metro stop, it's not a name they recognize. So you have to sort of account for that.
Yeah.
Have you tapped into the high school young guys?
No, that's been one of my. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the farmers markets except for Columbia Pike and County building are on weekdays, is that correct?
Columbia, it's about half and half. Columbia Pike Courthouse, I would say 3 or 4 of them are on weekends and the other 3 or 4 on weekdays, which makes it much harder. I mean, I can't volunteer on a weekday. Yeah. Yes, it's just open, right?
And Crystal City had a separate one.
Because Clarendon during the weekend.
And then one Saturday a month, they have, they take the Washington and Liberty parking ramp and turn that into a flea market.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you probably know all this.
Well, like I said, I mean, one of the reasons why I talked to you is because if you guys hear of any events that might be worth having a presence at, I would love to know. Because I haven't.
Maybe it's just too ambitious, and if you can, cover Clarendon like once a month.
Right.
If the same people are showing up at that one.
Right.
Because you might miss it at others.
Right.
So maybe that's the way to.
I like that idea.
But the calculus is that when you're poll greeting at the early voting location, 100% of the people you're interacting with are going to vote.
Yes.
And at the farmers market, it is very hard to target.
It is.
But it's important for registration.
Yes,
You're
registration.
picking up volunteers.
Exactly.
You're picking up people who are not tied in, but
Exactly.
put their name down and maybe they'll do something.
Yes.
Or they wouldn't mind standing there themselves, because they come every week or something.
Right.
Catching those. When I was standing at metro stops.
Yeah, I did a lot of that too.
I thought like, well, maybe I'm picking up a volunteer in a 2-hour shift. I may not be influencing very many people about voting, but picking up a volunteer or two, particularly when it's early in the now, next month or so. So appearing places is good, but not lots of people are passing by who are not interested yet in.
And may not even be from Arlington.
Right. Yeah. A lot of them are not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People who are on the edge.
Yes.
Last night they saw something in the indictment or something. It's about time I got involved.
After indictment number 4 or whatever. Well, yeah, and so that's part of my calculus is we can't be everywhere. It's also not a good use of people's time to be at some of these things. So I'm trying to ascertain what the best use of our time is. So again, I appreciate your thoughts.
The air conditioning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'll turn on the air conditioning. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Does anybody? Yeah, and so you do some thinking. If you don't have anything now, that's totally fine. I really appreciate and Kim, I really appreciate your thoughts. But I just want to introduce myself, let you know I'm here. Hopefully there's a face to this role now. And so look forward to working with you all. And
thanks for doing it. Yeah, thanks for doing it.
And thanks to Kim for coming today.
Yeah.
I'm going to end the recording and let our other folks leave, but you're all welcome to stay and finish